About 15 buildings here have been abandoned for quite some time. They did a lot of searching for the kids here.
Specifically for Jennifer and I believe Holly.
Growing up on Staten Island, Barbara and I had often heard the legend of Cropsey.
You're supposed to have a hook and axe.
A knife about this big.
Cropsey was the escaped mental patient who lived in the tunnels beneath the old abandoned Willowbrook Mental Institution, who would come out late at night to snatch children off the streets.
I would have never guessed that with the amount of weirdos living on Staten Island.
It might be somebody on your block. It might be somebody you work with.
You know, here's this guy going around picking off these kids.
I can imagine how other parents, even if your kid's gone for an hour, I can imagine how they must feel.
You know, that's probably one of the last things that you ever think about, that somebody would take your daughter.
It seemed like everywhere I went, there were people out in the woods looking for that little girl.
It's no question, if we were going to find her, we definitely were going to find her.
She thinks we're picking at dead children's bones.
We just want closure on this, that's all.
Children growing up on Staten Island have often heard the legend of Cropsey, an escaped mental patient who lived in the old abandoned Willowbrook Mental Institution. Late at night, Cropsey would sneak out into the darkness, snatching children up off of the streets. According to some children, Cropsey wielded a bloody axe. Other children claimed he had a hook hand, but every child agreed. Cropsey was always out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting to catch his next victim. Most adults believed Cropsey was just an urban legend used to scare younger kids and keep them out of the abandoned buildings on Willowbrook's property. However, in 1987, a 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome, Jennifer Schwager, disappeared from the community, along with 2 other little girls and 1 mentally challenged 21-year-old man. That is when everyone discovered that the urban legend was real. Back in 1970, reporter Geraldo Rivera took cameras inside the Willowbrook State School on Staten Island. What he found there shocked and horrified the nation. Hundreds upon hundreds of naked, mentally disabled children, some suffering from horrible deformities, others deaf and blind. All the children cowered together in giant hollow rooms, screaming and covered in their own feces. Despite these atrocious conditions, it took the state another 10 years to close down this house of horrors.
Institutions for the mentally retarded, and I think that particularly at Willowbrook that we have a situation that borders on a snake pit, and that the children live in filth, that many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
It's been more than 6 years since Robert Kennedy walked out of one of the wards here at Willowbrook and told newsmen of the horror he'd seen inside. He pleaded then for an overhaul of a system that allowed retarded children to live in a snake pit. But that was way back in 1965, and somehow we'd all forgotten. I first heard of this big place with the pretty-sounding name because of a call I received from a member of the Willowbrook staff, a Dr. Michael Wilkins. The doctor told me he'd just been fired because he'd been urging parents with children in one of the buildings, building number 6, to organize so they could more effectively demand improved conditions for their children. The doctor invited me to see the conditions he was talking about, so unannounced and unexpected by the school administration, we toured building number 6. The doctor had warned me that it would be bad. It was horrible. There was one attendant for perhaps 50 severely and profoundly retarded children.
The ones that we saw were the most severely and profoundly retarded. There are thousands there like that, not going to school, sitting on the ward all day, not being talked to by anyone, only 1 or 2 or 3 people to take care of 70 people on the ward, sharing the same toilet, contracting the same diseases.
Can the children be trained?
Yes, every child can be trained. You know, these kids, there's no effort. We don't know what these kids are capable of doing.
And I think your priorities are mixed up in New York in terms of serving the retarded. Your top investment is in institutions. Our top investment is in the Department of Education and in providing a program for the child while he's at home in terms of day care. For example, these kids can go to school at age 3 years. So they start at very young, and that helps a great deal for parents. And when parents are actively encouraged to keep their child at home, they do so because they know they can have the help of regional centers or public schools or the health department in terms of services, etc.
What we need is a new approach. We have to change the way we care for our mentally retarded. We ask for change, we demand change. What you've seen here just doesn't have to be this way.
I think all of us are at fault.
Shortly after Willowbrook was shut down, the urban legend started about Cropsey. And then, the 3 little girls and mentally disabled man went missing and showed that Cropsey may not be an urban legend after all. Although authorities and searchers have looked for over 30 years, only one body, that of Jennifer Schweitzer, was ever discovered. The body had been found shortly after Andre Rand, a former physical therapist from Willowbrook, was arrested and convicted of kidnapping Jennifer. It turns out that Andre Rand and dozens of other former Willowbrook patients and mentally unstable ex-staff had gone back to live on the grounds and in the woods after Willowbrook had shut down. They had survived in the vast underground tunnels and buildings in and underneath the massive facility. Rand and countless others practiced devil worship and other unspeakable acts while living on the Willowbrook grounds.
I think he's possessed. I really think that he is demonized and possessed.